And we're back on Southeast Texas Weekly. We've been talking about the Democratic presidential debate. Let's do this real quick. Paul Ryan, he's getting no love for Speaker of the House. What gives?
Problem is, he was strongly conservative, and then he ran for vice president, and he supported a couple of other things that don't look quite as conservative, like amnesty. And so people don't know where to classify him. And nobody wants the job either, by the way.
Yeah, nobody seems to want the job because it's a thankless, painful job right now. Well, we've done it. We've covered one Republican issue. So let's now that we're off that,
back to the dinosaurs.
I feel better. Now we move back to the presidential debate, where everybody is talking about the enormous number of ideas. As we said earlier in the New York Times editorial page, there was put forth this idea that these are the grown-ups in the room, that here with these Democratic presidential candidates that you are seeing for the first time, you know, the real people who have real ideas. Among the ideas for a better America, in-state tuition for undocumented immigrants, a higher minimum wage, Obamacare subsidies for undocumented immigrants, expanded Medicare, expanded Social Security.
It's funny, I never heard any of the several of those.
You didn't hear any of those, huh?
I didn't hear anything about undocumented, about immigrants
and
being able to get.
It's been argued that Hillary Clinton supported the idea where undocumented immigrants would buy into the Obamacare exchange. They buy in, but they would not be subsidized. Other candidates along, in the five-candidate panel supported some of these ideas. And all of these ideas were at some point supported. Is there, though, an argument to be made for how America pays down a $19 trillion debt in the context of?
Why don't we just return to the tax rates that we had during the largest economic boom in the world's history? Let's just return back to that.
And that would raise enough revenue to cover 1/3 of what they're spending.
It would actually. That is a misnomer, because the deficit has actually been reduced over the last 6 years.
It's $400 billion.
And
the
it
first
has
year
been
of Obama
reduced.
was $1.4 trillion.
When you look at the position the country was in with the Great Recession,
I mean, $1.4 trillion.
Yeah, and that was to bail out a lot of rich bankers. Billions and hundreds of billions of dollars.
The idea was supposed to be a little more grandiloquent. It was supposed to be the idea that they're too big to save. That it's not just the big bankers and the big banks that you save, but when the big banks collapse, that you then have the domino effect through American small business, for example. That was supposed to be the idea.
Well, here's the other thing. It was $3.7 trillion what we spent the first year of Obama. And we only raised in taxes $2 trillion. 1.7 was just written. If we were just going to write that much, why did we tax the whole first $2 trillion? Why don't we just print the whole thing?
It's funny you say this, because if the Bush tax cuts had been allowed to expire as they should have,
right,
then we would have been able to have raised the revenue to be able to actually balance and pay off and actually pay off the deficit. The deficit could have been paid off within 20 years.
Let me get to this idea of expanding Medicare, expanding Social Security, both programs that have been troubled in the past. Social Security supposed to be insolvent, I want to say 2029, anybody have numbers, something in that area. I mean, insolvent 2029. Social Security, all these issues all these programs are troubled, and yet there is a lot of support there for expanding them, making them even larger. In other words, were you surprised that there wasn't a word from the stage at the Democratic presidential debate about paying down the debt, handling the budget on a regular?
Well, paying down the debt is a bad idea. I mean, right now, to pay the debt down, if you compare our economy with the economies in Europe, the European economies followed a more austere approach after the Great Depression, recession, whatever you want to call it. And those countries have not recovered. I mean, Greece is in shambles, Spain has had problems, the French have problems. And Keynesian economics, spending additional monies in hard times, have caused and allowed this country to recover at a faster rate. And if we'd given President Obama another $900 billion for jobs programs, we'd be further along in our recovery, and the economy would have expanded, and the tax base would be greater to pay it back.
So you just pay if you spend more money, you get wealthier. That's what
it's called investment. Kevin, it's called investment.
If you were asking me,
but you're not spending as much money on social programs and supporting people and causing the painful cuts to people and allowing the Bush tax cut to expire. America's glory years were Bill Clinton's years. There was $1 worldwide, there was one military, and there was one economic power, period.
And I give you the final word.
Okay, I have to say, when you go to Europe, the UK, their gross
45 seconds.
Gross domestic product is
30
a
seconds.
much greater percentage of their total debt.
15
Greece,
seconds.
their debt is way more than their gross domestic product, much like where we're headed. So we're looking a lot more like Greece than we are like the UK.
You guys are the greatest. I appreciate it. Good insight. And I think we've solved a few of the world's problems today. Well done, guys. We appreciate it. And we're going to run with that. But we'll be back in 2 weeks for the latest edition of Southeast Texas Weekly, Political Style. We'll see you then. Take care.
Southeast Texas Weekly, brought to you by the Modern Vein Surgery Institute at Privity Clinic for Surgical Care.